Have you ever wondered why the very qualities you find most irritating in others often feel like a distorted mirror reflecting back at you? It's a subtle whisper, a nagging discomfort, or sometimes an outright visceral aversion. This isn't just about personal preferences. It delves into the profound, often hidden, depths of the human psyche. We project what we cannot accept within ourselves, casting our unacknowledged traits, our fears, and our unlived potentials onto the canvas of those around us. This phenomenon, illuminated by the profound insights of Carl Jung, serves as a crucial gateway to understanding our own emotional landscape and unlocking the path to genuine self-acceptance. Imagine a woman named Alara, an artist whose canvases brimmed with vibrant colors and swirling forms, yet whose life felt muted, constrained by an unspoken fear of failure. She lived in a quaint coastal town, her studio overlooking the restless sea, a metaphor for the turbulence within her own soul. Alara had always been drawn to the ocean's raw power, its endless horizon, yet she rarely ventured beyond the familiar shore. Her artistic talent was undeniable, praised by local critics and admired by fellow artists. But she never dared to exhibit her work in the prestigious galleries of the city. The thought alone would send a tremor through her, a cold knot in her stomach. She often spoke with a dismissive tone about ambitious artists who chased fame or sold their souls for recognition. Her voice tinged with a subtle bitterness she herself couldn't quite place. She saw them as arrogant, superficial, driven by a desperate need for external validation. They lack true integrity, she'd mused to her friend, Liam, a quiet potter who understood the silent language of creation. Their art is merely a performance. Yet, in the quiet solitude of her studio, Alara would secretly pore over art magazines, her gaze lingering on the profiles of those very artists she critiqued. A complex cocktail of fascination and resentment brewing within her. She'd find herself inexplicably drawn to their stories of struggle and triumph, a yearning stirring in her own chest that she quickly suppressed. One blustery autumn evening, a renowned art critic, Dr. Eris Thorne, visited the small town. He was known for his sharp intellect and unsparing reviews, a figure Alara secretly revered and simultaneously dreaded. A mutual acquaintance, recognizing Alara's talent, arranged a meeting. Alara, usually poised and articulate, found herself stammering, her carefully constructed composure fracturing under Thorne's piercing gaze. He spoke of art as a mirror, reflecting not just the world, but the artist's soul, their deepest truths. He spoke of courage, of the vulnerability inherent in true creation. The artist who fears judgment, he stated, his voice a low rumble, fears their own power. They project their unlived potential onto the world, seeing it as a threat rather than an invitation. Alara felt a prickling sensation, a discomfort that went beyond mere shyness. His words resonated with an unsettling accuracy, stirring a hidden fear she had kept locked away. Later, at a small gathering, Alara observed Thorne engaging with a young, burgeoning artist, Anya, whose work was bold, experimental, and unapologetically ambitious. Anya spoke with a fervent passion about her aspirations, her desire to push boundaries, to be seen. Alara felt a familiar surge of disdain. Such brazenness, she thought, such overt seeking of validation. She found herself making subtle, dismissive remarks about Anya's naivete and lack of substance to Liam, who listened with a knowing silence. A week later, a local gallery announced an open call for submissions for an upcoming exhibition. Alara felt an intense inner conflict. Part of her yearned to submit, to finally put her work out there, to taste the validation she so vehemently denied she desired. Another, more dominant part, recoiled in fear, whispering anxieties of rejection, of being judged and found wanting. She spent days wrestling with herself, her studio becoming a battleground of conflicting desires. She thought of Anya, the young artist, and her seemingly fearless pursuit of recognition. She's so transparent, Alara muttered to her empty studio. The word transparent, masking a deeper, unacknowledged envy. She saw Anya's ambition as a flaw, a sign of weakness, yet couldn't shake the feeling that Anya possessed a freedom, a courage, that Alara herself lacked. This simmering resentment was a direct reflection of her own unexpressed desire for recognition, her own stifled ambition. She was projecting her unacknowledged shadow, the part of her that yearned for external validation and feared vulnerability, onto Anya, making Anya's pursuit of success seem distasteful because Alara couldn't permit it in herself. One afternoon, Liam visited her studio. He looked at her latest unfinished canvas, a tempestuous sea scene, and then at Alara, her face etched with internal struggle. "Alara," he said gently, "you talk about others chasing fame, but isn't there a part of you that wishes to be seen, truly seen, for your art?" The question hung in the air, a delicate challenge. Alara's breath hitched. She wanted to deny it, to dismiss his words, but the truth was too potent to ignore. The projection was shattering, revealing the hidden facet of her own desire. It was then that a profound realization began to dawn upon her. The arrogance she perceived in others, the desperate need for external validation, the brazenness. These were not inherent flaws in them, but echoes of her own unacknowledged ambitions and fears. She had condemned in others what she feared most about herself, the desire to be seen, to be celebrated, to take up space. Her fear of failure was so profound that she had chosen to criticize the very act of trying, rather than confronting her own anxieties. The shadow was not lurking in others, but within her own psyche. Alara's journey into self-awareness began with that painful recognition. The archetype of the shadow was playing a dominant role in her life, manifesting as her aversion to others' ambition. This shadow, as theorized by Jung, represents the unconscious aspects of the personality that the conscious ego does not identify with, often containing qualities and desires that are considered negative or undesirable. For Alara, her unacknowledged ambition, her desire for recognition, and her fear of vulnerability were all relegated to her shadow. When these repressed aspects appeared in others, particularly in Anya, Alara experienced ego projection, seeing her own unacceptable traits in someone else. This is a defensive mechanism, a way of avoiding the discomfort of confronting one's own perceived flaws. The theme here is the profound impact of unacknowledged desires and fears on our perceptions of others and, ultimately, on our own potential for growth. The characters, Alara and Anya, serve as archetypes of the suppressed artist and the bold aspirant, respectively, highlighting the friction that arises when one confronts their own hidden aspects. This revelation offers a powerful mirror for your own life. Consider, dear viewer, those individuals who consistently trigger a strong negative reaction within you. What specific qualities or behaviors do they exhibit that you find particularly grating? Could it be that these very traits are echoes of something within you that you have suppressed, denied, or judged as unacceptable? Perhaps it's an unexpressed creativity, a buried ambition, a fear of vulnerability, or even a suppressed desire for control. The path to healing begins with acknowledging your shadow. Instead of turning away from discomfort, lean into it. Ask yourself, what part of myself am I refusing to see when I react so strongly to this person? This isn't about blaming yourself. It's about understanding the complex tapestry of your own psyche. Embrace the idea that what you resist often persists. The qualities you despise in others might be precisely the qualities you need to integrate for your own wholeness, for your own journey of individuation. Begin with small acts of introspection. Journal about your strongest reactions to others. Explore the roots of your discomfort. By bringing these hidden aspects into the light of conscious awareness, you begin to reclaim your power, transforming what was once a source of pain and judgment into a catalyst for profound self-acceptance and growth. The journey of healing isn't about eradicating parts of yourself, but about integrating them, making them whole. Are you ready to look into the mirror? Has it ever struck you how some of the most profound struggles in relationships stem not from genuine incompatibilities, but from a relentless, often unconscious, drive to mold another person into a reflection of our unfulfilled expectations or unhealed wounds? This isn't merely about personal preferences. It delves into the intricate dance of the psyche, where our deepest needs and unresolved traumas project onto those we love, creating a distorted reality. The essence of this struggle lies in our inability to accept the other person fully, precisely because we haven't fully accepted ourselves. This echoes the profound insights of Carl Rogers, who championed the concept of unconditional positive regard, and Sigmund Freud, who delved into the unconscious motivations that drive our relational patterns. Consider the timeless wisdom embedded in the words of Carl Rogers, a titan in humanistic psychology. The curious paradox is that when I accept myself as I am, then I can change. While Rogers primarily applied this to self-acceptance, its reverberations extend profoundly into our relationships. When we truly accept ourselves, flaws and all, we free ourselves from the desperate need for external validation, and crucially, from the need to constantly fix or control others. Conversely, when we harbor unaccepted aspects within ourselves, perhaps a deep-seated insecurity, a lingering shame, or an unfulfilled longing, these unacknowledged facets become the fertile ground for projection. We then seek to find resolution for our internal conflicts by projecting them onto our partners, family members, or friends, expecting them to somehow fill the void or embody the traits we deny in ourselves. This dynamic is a relentless cycle, a tragic play where the other person is cast in a role they never auditioned for, burdened by our unconscious scripts. Let us consider the story of Marcus and Clara, a couple whose love story began with a passionate intensity that seemed destined for forever. Marcus, a driven and seemingly self-assured architect, carried a hidden wound from a childhood where his achievements were rarely acknowledged by his emotionally distant father. He had developed a formidable exterior, a persona of unwavering competence and control, yet beneath it lay a profound longing for affirmation, a deep-seated fear of being seen as anything less than perfect. Clara, a free-spirited artist, was drawn to Marcus's strength and stability, finding in him a grounding presence. However, as their relationship deepened, a subtle, corrosive pattern began to emerge. Marcus, unconsciously seeking the validation he never received as a child, began to project his unmet need for admiration onto Clara. He would subtly, at first, then more overtly, criticize her artistic pursuits, deeming them impractical or unrealistic. He would offer unsolicited improvements to her canvases, or dismiss her creative ideas with a wave of his hand. He believed he was helping her, guiding her towards a more stable path, but in reality, he was attempting to mold her into a reflection of the successful and approved image he desperately craved for himself. His criticisms were not about Clara's art, but about his own fear of not being enough, his own yearning for an external measure of worth. He couldn't accept vulnerability or uncertainty in himself, so he projected this intolerance onto Clara's artistic journey, seeing her fluid, experimental nature as a threat to his own rigidly constructed world. Clara, on her part, yearned for unconditional acceptance, a space where her creativity could flourish without judgment. She had grown up in a chaotic household where emotional expression was often stifled, leading her to suppress her own needs for fear of disrupting harmony. She initially sought validation from Marcus, eager for his approval, but his constant subtle critiques chipped away at her self-worth. She began to doubt her artistic vision, to second-guess her choices, and eventually, her vibrant spirit began to dim. The very freedom that had initially attracted Marcus became the target of his projections. He saw her uninhibited nature as a lack of discipline, a perceived flaw that mirrored his own unacknowledged desire for liberation from his rigid self-imposed standards. He couldn't accept his own suppressed desire for spontaneity, so he subtly tried to extinguish it in her, thereby controlling the very trait he secretly envied. This became a battleground of unconscious needs. Marcus's desperate search for external affirmation projected as control over Clara's choices, and Clara's yearning for unadulterated acceptance, often expressed through quiet resentment and withdrawal. Their arguments were rarely about the surface issues. They were symphonies of unspoken fears and unaddressed shadows. One evening, after a particularly bruising argument about Clara's decision to apply for an unconventional art residency, Clara confided in her older sister, Lena. Lena, a psychologist, listened patiently. "Clara," she said softly, "Marcus isn't seeing you. He's seeing a reflection of his own fears. He's projecting his unlived desires, his need for control, onto you. And you, in turn, are allowing his projections to define you, because perhaps there are parts of yourself that you haven't fully embraced either. Lena then spoke of Freud's concept of transference, how early experiences and relationships shape our expectations and behaviors in present relationships, often unconsciously. Marcus was transferring his unresolved issues with his father onto Clara, expecting her to provide the affirmation he lacked, and then becoming frustrated when she couldn't. This was not a conscious act of malice, but a deeply ingrained psychological pattern. Clara realized that she, too, was engaging in a form of projection, expecting Marcus to be the sole source of her validation, rather than cultivating it within herself. She was projecting her need for uncritical acceptance onto him, rather than finding it through self-compassion. The realization was a turning point. Clara began to understand that Marcus's criticisms were not about her inherent worth as an artist, but about his own unresolved internal conflicts. She started to reclaim her own voice, to paint not for his approval, but for her own soul. Marcus, witnessing Clara's quiet resilience and newfound inner strength, was subtly forced to confront his own insecurities. Her refusal to be molded, her gradual embrace of her own authenticity, created a space for him to glimpse the possibility of his own self-acceptance. This is the essence of individuation in relationships. Two individuals, each on their unique journey of becoming whole, yet doing so in the presence of and often catalyzed by the other. The challenge lies not in changing the other, but in recognizing that the flaws we perceive in them are often signposts leading us back to ourselves, to the parts we have disowned or repressed. The characters of Marcus and Clara embody the archetypes of the achiever burdened by expectation and the creative seeking liberation. Their narrative illustrates the pervasive influence of ego projection in intimate relationships, where unresolved inner conflicts are externalized and placed upon a partner. The central theme here is the critical role of self-acceptance in fostering healthy relationships. Without it, we become entangled in a web of expectations, attempting to force our partners into roles that serve our own unfulfilled psychological needs. This often stems from deep-seated trauma psychology, where early experiences of invalidation or unmet needs create blueprints for how we seek connection and validation in adulthood. Consider your own intimate relationships. Where do you find yourself constantly trying to change or fix your partner? What specific traits or behaviors do you wish they would alter? Now, bravely ask yourself, is there a part of you that possesses that very trait, but which you have suppressed or judged? Or is there an unmet need within you that you are unconsciously asking your partner to fulfill? The truth is often uncomfortable, yet liberating. To truly heal, to truly connect, you must begin the courageous work of shadow work within yourself. This involves acknowledging and integrating those disowned parts of your personality. Instead of demanding change from your partner, shift your focus inward. Cultivate unconditional positive regard for yourself, embracing your vulnerabilities, your imperfections, and your unfulfilled desires. As Carl Rogers observed, it is through this radical self-acceptance that genuine transformation becomes possible, not just for you, but for the very fabric of your relationships. This journey of self-discovery is not selfish. It is the most profound act of love you can offer to another. Are you willing to embark on this journey of radical self-acceptance? Have you ever considered that the most significant obstacles to your personal growth and inner peace aren't external circumstances, but rather the deeply ingrained patterns of thought and belief you hold about yourself? Patterns often formed in the crucible of your past and rigidly maintained by your resistance to vulnerability? This isn't just about fleeting emotions. It delves into the very architecture of your self-worth, a foundation often compromised by unhealed wounds and the pervasive fear of judgment. The truth is, we often cling to what is familiar, even if it causes us pain, simply because the unknown of genuine self-acceptance feels terrifying. This resistance, a profound barrier to individuation, keeps us trapped in cycles of self-sabotage, preventing us from truly embracing our inherent worth. The Stoics, ancient philosophers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, understood the immense power of internal fortitude and the futility of seeking validation from external sources. While they emphasized rational thought and emotional discipline, their wisdom subtly intertwines with the psychological understanding of self-worth. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, famously wrote, If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. While not directly addressing projection, this encapsulates the essence of reclaiming internal power. Our estimate of ourselves, often shaped by early experiences and external validation or lack thereof, dictates how we perceive the world and how we allow the world to perceive us. The pain of projection, of seeing our unaccepted selves in others, stems from our inability to revoke our own negative self-estimates. The ultimate liberation lies in transforming these internal narratives, recognizing that true self-worth is an inside job, a fundamental shift in perception that allows us to integrate our fragmented selves. Consider the journey of Leo, a man in his late 30s, outwardly successful, a respected business consultant, yet plagued by a gnawing sense of inadequacy. From a young age, Leo had been praised for his intelligence and quick wit, but rarely for his emotional depth or vulnerability. His family, though loving, inadvertently fostered an environment where emotions were seen as weaknesses, to be suppressed and controlled. As an adult, Leo found himself constantly striving for external validation, each professional accolade a temporary balm for an enduring inner emptiness. He had an almost visceral disdain for anyone he perceived as needy or overly emotional, often dismissing their struggles with a cold logic. "They just need to toughen up," he'd declare, a sentiment that echoed the emotional armor he himself had forged. This disdain was a classic case of ego projection, the shadow aspect of his own suppressed emotional vulnerability manifesting as judgment towards others. He couldn't accept his own hidden tenderness, his own fear of feeling, so he projected it onto those who dared to express it. He was terrified of being seen as weak, a fear rooted in the early conditioning that taught him to hide his true self. Leo's life took an unexpected turn when his younger sister, Sarah, fell into a deep depression. Sarah, unlike Leo, was openly expressive, often wearing her heart on her sleeve. Initially, Leo responded with his usual detached logic, offering practical solutions, almost clinical advice. But Sarah's pain was too profound to be reasoned away. He found himself utterly helpless, and in that helplessness, a crack appeared in his carefully constructed facade. He felt a profound discomfort in her presence, a sense of irritation at her inability to cope, yet beneath it, a terrifying echo. He saw in her the very emotional vulnerability he had spent a lifetime repressing in himself. This was his shadow screaming for recognition. The more Sarah expressed her pain, the more agitated Leo became, a clear sign of his own unaddressed emotional trauma surfacing. He was projecting his own fear of being overwhelmed by emotion onto her. One particularly difficult evening, Sarah, her voice raw with anguish, turned to him and simply said, "Leo, I don't need you to fix me. I just need you to see me, to truly see me with all this mess and not judge it." Her words, stripped of any pretense, pierced through Leo's defenses. In that moment, something shifted. He looked at his sister, truly looked at her, and for the first time, he saw not a weak person, but a human being in immense pain, a pain that mirrored his own unacknowledged suffering. The realization was excruciatingly painful, yet profoundly liberating. He saw his own fear of emotional engulfment, his own desperate need for control, reflected in his harsh judgments of her. This was the beginning of his journey into shadow work. He started by simply allowing himself to feel uncomfortable emotions, a terrifying prospect for someone who had mastered suppression. He began journaling, cautiously at first, then with increasing honesty, exploring the origins of his emotional armor. He sought therapy, a challenging step for someone who had always prided himself on self-sufficiency. Through this process, Leo started to dismantle the rigid structures of his ego, slowly integrating the parts of himself he had deemed unacceptable: his vulnerability, his need for connection, his capacity for deep feeling. He learned that expressing emotion wasn't weakness, but a profound strength. He discovered that the needy individuals he had once dismissed were, in fact, bravely demonstrating their humanity. Leo's journey is a powerful testament to the transformative power of confronting our deepest fears and embracing our full selves. He embodies the archetype of the Stoic mask, a persona built on perceived strength and emotional suppression, ultimately challenged by the raw vulnerability of his sister, the wounded healer. The theme here is the courageous act of integrating the shadow, particularly the aspects related to emotional expression and vulnerability, leading to profound healing pain and the cultivation of genuine self-worth. This often involves delving into trauma psychology, understanding how early experiences shape our defense mechanisms. This powerful narrative holds a mirror to your own being. Where in your life do you resist feeling certain emotions? What aspects of yourself do you consistently judge or try to hide, fearing they might be perceived as weaknesses? Remember, the discomfort you feel when witnessing these traits in others is not a condemnation of them, but an invitation to look inward. The path to authentic self-worth, to true individuation, is not about eradicating these perceived flaws, but about courageously embracing them. It's about understanding that your vulnerability is not a liability, but the very source of your deepest connection and strength. Begin today by actively challenging your own negative self-talk. When you feel a surge of judgment towards another, pause. Ask yourself, what part of me am I seeing reflected here? What unspoken fear or unmet need within my soul is this reaction pointing to? Engage in practices that foster stillness and self-connection, whether it's mindful walking in nature, quiet meditation, or the flowing movements of yoga. These practices create space for self-reflection, allowing you to observe your thoughts and emotions without immediate judgment. Visualize yourself shedding the layers of external validation, standing strong in your own inherent worth, not because of what you achieve or what others think of you, but simply because you are. This journey of internal transformation is not a sprint, but a profound evolution. It's about cultivating an unwavering faith in your own inner power, transforming negative thought patterns into seeds of self-compassion and understanding. The ending isn't about eliminating pain, but about transforming it into purpose, transforming weakness into wisdom. It's a rebirth, a quiet revolution within your own soul, where stillness becomes your sanctuary and self-acceptance your greatest victory. What unacknowledged truth about yourself are you ready to embrace today? If you found this reflection interesting, or see yourself in Leo's story, please leave a comment to help our channel hear from you. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, please send them this video as a necessary share. Thanks for watching. The end.